Howdy, boys and girls. It is bowl season, and this is Carla and Crappy Bowlapalooza. Hi, Carla. How you doing?
Hi, Crappy. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. As we have the past couple years, I think it's been the past couple years, we have actual experts joining us this time from Athlon Sports. And you can find them at athlonsports.com. Braden, Gall, and David Fox. We are very pleased to have you guys back again this year. How's it going, guys? Pretty good.
Doing well. I think you're overvaluing the term expert, though.
So. Well, I'm the comparison I'm making is to my own knowledge, and clearly that's you're going to be in the expert realm if we're talking about
Stop
that.
It. Go on.
Hey, as we've always done in the past, each of us has picked one of the 8,000 bowl games that we wanted to highlight, and we're going to talk about those. But while I have you guys here, I'm going to ask you one question. What is the right number of bowl games? Given there are 40 or 41, we have some teams that are under 500 who are playing in bowl games this year. In your minds, what is the right number here? How far past are we at 40 or 41, whatever it is?
Well, I think as many teams as are willing to play would be one answer. I think my answer is this year's too many. We have the 5 and 7 teams being in bowl games, probably a little, probably stretching things a little bit too far. But you know what? If you don't like 5 and 7 teams, you don't have to watch them. It'll probably get up to 4 and 8 at some point. But we're right up against, I think, the where you have to take the bowl season seriously.
Hey, Braden, do you have any thoughts about how many games we have going on between now and the end of the season?
Well, it's hard to not like football games, just as a general philosophy. So it's very difficult to not like that. Fox pointed to the ratings, I think, which is the key here. The only reason that they're happening and there's more of them is because we all still watch them. And if you don't like them, your only power as a capitalist in this country is to not watch them. And as soon as we stop watching them, then they'll stop putting them on television. Because it's not about people going to the games, and it's not about, corporate sponsorship will always be there. And most teams will always keep going to them because it's great practice time. It's a great recruiting trip for fans and for players and all that good stuff. So it's up to us if we don't like them. The problem is we've got a 5 and 7 team this year that's one of the biggest fan bases in the history of college football. So we're going to watch UCLA and Nebraska, even though I really don't want to watch. I draw the line at 5 and 7. I don't want to watch, and I will not watch San Jose State, and I will not watch Minnesota. I've promised myself that.
Okay, I've watched Minnesota a couple times this season.
That's all you need.
You're not missing much. They're okay. They're pretty good. Carla, what do you think?
Yeah, the 5 and 7 thing kind of, I don't know. That's, and I understand why they're doing that because they have to fill, they have sponsors and the whole bit. But I don't know. I think we're probably 5 or 6 games probably over where we should be. But I know we were talking about this earlier in the evening, and we might talk about it a little bit later. The timing of these games is weird. This year, just being later. It feels later anyway. I don't know whether or not that's a real thing, but it feels like normally bowl season's already started at this point. At least it feels that way. And I don't know, we're not starting until Saturday, and that gives away when we're shooting the show. But yeah, we haven't started yet, and it's kind of one of those weird things where it's like normally it's like the Army-Navy game, and then we have a bowl game on Wednesday. And that's not happening this year, and I don't know what the difference is. So that's more of a bigger issue for me.
And let me throw out there to the Bill Hancocks of the world that want to protect the sanctity of the bowl game. The way you do that is have 12 of them, and then they'll be extremely important, and it would be a huge honor to go to them, like it used to be when in the 70s or 80s or 90s you would go to the Sugar Bowl or the Citrus Bowl or the Peach Bowl, and it meant a lot to your team. And that's how you protect the sanctity is you cut it, and then you make it a bigger honor to go, and then it becomes a bigger deal.
Okay. I'm curious about, especially when you look at some of the sponsors. If you got an incredible sponsorship like the Battle Frog, I'm not sure how you can pass that up and slap that name on a bowl game and get started. We'll get to that one in a minute. To start with the games, this sponsorship actually makes the most sense. The New Era Pinstripe Bowl in Yankee Stadium. Carl, I believe this is your game. Indiana versus Duke. and the Hoosiers are a 2-point favorite. Why don't you get us started?
So this is a game between what would be a really great basketball game, but instead it's a football game being played in a baseball stadium, which is like the best combination ever, right? So Indiana is that team that everybody like. They kind of became the darling of the Big Ten to an extent because they started the season 4-0. They lose to your Buckeyes and then end up losing. That they lost 6 straight then, and then had to beat Purdue on the last week of the year to even become bowl eligible. Although who knows, had they finished 5-7, they might have gotten a bowl anyway this year. It's hard to tell, but Indiana just had one of those seasons that you just kind of, it's a head scratcher. They were up by by 28 points or something like that to Rutgers in the third quarter and then lost.
Yes.
Just you wanted to love the Hoosiers, and at the same time they just kept going, ugh, really? Duke, on the other hand, these two teams are really, really, their seasons are parallel, right? Because Duke was on the wrong end of that lateral miracle, whatever, that shouldn't have happened because the knee was down anyway, to Miami, and lost that game and then lost 3 straight after that. So that started a 4-game losing streak for them. Now, the difference between these two seasons is the fact that Duke was already bowl eligible when that happened, so they didn't have anything to worry about. But they both had these weird, losses because you saw the Indiana game and the nervousness that you felt watching that game, because I remember we were talking about that on Twitter. And then you have the Duke game that against Miami, and so it's really, really interesting. I really think this is a fun early season game. Duke's been to 4 straight bowl games, believe it or not. This is their 4th, and they have yet to win one. Indiana's in its 2nd bowl for like 27 years or something like that. So both these teams have a lot to play for, even though it's in Yankee Stadium in the Pinstripe Bowl. So I don't know. I think Duke's the better team here. But who knows what's going to happen with Indiana? If their offense is rolling, which it could do. They might come out and shock a bunch of people and hand Duke its 4th straight bowl loss, but I really do think Duke is the better team here, and they will come away with the win. But I think it's an undercarded game that I think you need to pay attention to. Although it's on a bad time, it's on December 26th in the middle of the afternoon. So make your Christmas plans accordingly and try to get caught up on that game.
I can make time for that on the day after Christmas. That's no problem. Braden, what do you think about this one?
The rich, fertile recruiting grounds of the Bronx for Indiana. Very important for Jim Delaney in the Big Ten to really get a foothold in the Bronx. No, Tom Coverdale versus John Shire. I love this matchup. It's going to be tremendous. I like Indiana's offense. I love it. I love watching Indiana play. I mean, Carla, you just you rattled off all the numbers there for them. The way that they kind of lived on the edge, had leads against good teams, and just couldn't finish it off. And I think Duke's kind of trending in the wrong direction right now. Unfortunately, I love Cutcliffe, but I think Indiana's offense is going to be pretty solid. I like the Hoosiers in this one. Give me Tom Coverdale in the striped pants.
What do you think?
Yeah, we talk about these bowl games not meaning much, and yeah, you laugh at the fact that it's 2 basketball schools playing in a baseball stadium, but as Carla said, these are 2 teams that don't, historically don't go to bowls very often and win bowls, very, very, a lot of years in between bowl wins. So, this might be one of those games where players are more fired up. You watch these bowls and there's some where they feel like it's a consolation prize and nobody wants to be there. This might be one of those bowl games where, Indiana and Duke are looking to justify their seasons and really make up for some losses that maybe they shouldn't have taken earlier in the year, and then actually come away as bowl winners. Which schools like Florida and Ohio State, Penn State, and Tennessee and Wisconsin, they might take that for granted, but probably Indiana.
You can't put Penn State and Tennessee in that same category. They don't win bowl games.
They've won more than Duke and Indiana.
For a while, you couldn't put Ohio State in that category either, but maybe we're turning that around a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and pick Indiana. I saw enough of them. I saw plenty of them on one Saturday in October. but yeah, that offense is it's a lot of fun to watch, and I do feel like these are teams that are kind of headed in different directions. Duke had a nice start to the early season and has kind of slowed down since. I think the Hoosiers are going to be the pick for this one. Next up, we have the Advocare Texas Bowl. Advocare is
V100.
I'm sorry, I left out the number. I left out the number. This game is in Houston on December 29th, which is my mother's birthday. Hi, Mom. Happy birthday. LSU and Texas Tech. LSU is a 7-point favorite. David, I think this was your game to pick.
Yeah, this one I like for a few reasons. I think it could have some shootout potential. Texas Tech ranks 126th in rush defense this year, and the last time we saw them, they were getting shredded by a freshman from Texas. And now they're going to face Leonard Fournette, who, even though he fell out of the Heisman race as the season went on, he still finished the season leading the country in rushing. But LSU's defense, isn't all that great either, and Texas Tech can move the ball. So, this has this could be really exciting, but I think it also could be a game that we're going to overrate the winner of this team or of this game. Think about how you feel about LSU and Texas Tech now. Texas Tech went 4-5 in the Big 12, kind of just an okay season. LSU was a big letdown, just about fired Les Miles. One of these teams has got to win, and I think the team that wins this game is going to get a ton of momentum into next year that they have no chance of living up to. So, we talk about it at Athlon all the time. Who are we going to overrate after the bowl season? And it's going to be one of these teams between Texas Tech and LSU.
Okay, so who are we overrating? Do you have a sense?
I think it's going to be LSU because I think LSU is going to win this game. I think they're going to win this game, and then they beat Texas A&M to save Les Miles' job, and it's just like, oh, it's fixed now. It's all fine. It's all fine here. Nothing to see. It's all fine here. How are you?
First of all, I don't think anyone's ever asked me, how do you feel about Texas Tech? I don't think anyone's ever asked me that.
Should I go ahead and do that now?
Before. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you feel about Texas Tech?
2 times now in 5 minutes someone's asked me that. No, this is a classic which team is motivated to play the game. And bowl games are charity exhibitions, literally, and it's all about motivation. And some teams show up and some teams don't. Some players are going pro. Some players are protecting themselves. I mean, if you're a junior for LSU, are you going to look back on your career and really remember that victory in the Advocare V100 Texas Bowl over the Red Raiders where they don't even know where Lubbock is? Or are you trying to protect your knees for the NFL draft? This is all about motivation, and if LSU shows up and they want to win, they'll win by 50. If LSU shows up like they've showed up in the last month of the season, Texas Tech will put 45 points on them, and it will be a great game. So it's all about the job Les Miles and his coaching staff does to motivate, but God, I mean, they don't half their fans don't even like them right now. So this is a fascinating motivational study for those players and these types of games.
Okay, a little bit sociology instead of just college football. Carla, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, that's an interesting point because at the end of the season, you and I talked how many times when we were picking LSU games saying this is the one that the team's going to stand up and say, no, we're going to win this one for our coach,
right,
and put an end to this whole Les Miles is out the door thing. And what happened in all of those games but one? They lost. So you're absolutely right. This is, we kept waiting for this LSU team to say, okay, we're going to win one for our coach because we like him and we don't want him to get fired, and they just didn't perform. So I think motivation is a great thing. Does it get any better than the matchup between the strategic matchup between Les Miles and Cliff Kingsbury? I mean, come on. You've got one who's really kind of crazy, one who got his head coaching job probably 2 years too early. It's a very interesting matchup. I do think if LSU is, like Braden said, if LSU is motivated, I really do think that Leonard Fournette is going to destroy what little defense Texas Tech has against the run. So I think if they come in motivated to play, I think LSU can win. But I think it's gonna be a shootout in the first half, and I think it'll be one of those games where it's gonna be really tight at the half, and then LSU's strength and power run game behind Fournette will put it away. But yeah, this is another one of those. Especially watch the first half of this game if you like offense.
Okay, I'm kind of leaning toward Braden, what you said about motivation, and if LSU's not really paying attention, this is going to be a tight one, and I kind of think that's how this is going to go. It will be fun. I think LSU will win the game eventually, but a lot of scoring and reason to sit down and watch on a December 29th. Next, we have the Chick-fil-A Never on a Sunday Peach Bowl in Atlanta on New Year's Eve. Braden, this is your pick, and I will admit up front I have a rooting interest in this, mostly because I really wish Tom Herman was still in the press box, right, in the coach's box in Columbus. Florida State is a 7-point favorite over Houston. What do you see for this one?
Well, Tom Herman's teeth.
Yeah. Yes.
First of all, I can't wait to see what Tom Herman looks like with a grill. People tell me that's something you put on your teeth. Maybe go Cougs or something. I don't know. Actually, the reason I picked this is classic motivation. I mean, these bowl games are almost entirely about which team wants it more and which team's going to show up. And think about, like, okay, for example, Jalen Ramsey, superstar safety for Florida State, probably going to be a top 10 pick in the draft coming up in whenever the draft is, May. I don't know. But if you look at his jewelry box, right, like right now today, and you start ranking the jewelry that he owns, where does the Peach Bowl ring fall into all that? And it's like 4th or 5th or 6th behind BCS National Championship and 2-time ACC championship rings. I mean, so what does Florida State have to play for? Peach Bowls are almost like consolation prizes to programs like Florida State. And unlike Northern Illinois and Hawaii and Cincinnati and some other big teams that have played in these, quote, BCS games like we're seeing here, I think Houston's actually good enough to play with them. I think Houston's good enough to run with them all because of Tom Herman. They recruited well under Tony Levine. They got weaponry. Greg Ward will be healthy and ready to go. Bowl games are called differently. They're played differently. They're coached differently. And I guarantee you there's a big chunk of that Florida State roster that has no desire to even go out there and play. I think Houston could win the game outright because they're going to be so this is their Super Bowl. This is their let's show the world that we're for real. We deserve more recognition. This is our program on the map kind of thing. And like I said, guys at Florida State look at the Peach Bowl and they go, oh, okay, that's cool. I mean, we're in Atlanta, all right. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think Houston's going to play really well. They're going to be extremely motivated. This is, again, classic which team wants it more, and I think the want it more column is in Houston's favor. They got a fun offense. They got a well-prepared defense, and they got players who can make plays. I think they're good enough to actually hang with Florida State.
Okay, David, what do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with Florida State how they come out and play this game. It's kind of been I wouldn't say a lost season because they are in the Peach Bowl, and I think there's a little bit different, feeling around the game when you're playing an Ohio State Notre Dame game in a bowl game rather than getting stuck with the Group of 5 team. I think you get a mixed bag sometimes, whether it's a letdown like Alabama, Utah. It's a great game like Oklahoma, Boise State, or an absolute blowout like Georgia, Hawaii. I think this could be any one of those 3 things. But I'm really interested to see what happens to Houston because I think they can build upon this bowl game because they open next year with Oklahoma. They can go into next year with let's say they beat Florida State and then open with Oklahoma. Well, then kind of it's the sky's the limit. They got a lot of the same guys coming back. They got Tom Herman coming back, who's a rising star. So, this is a pretty big stretch between an AAC championship game, a big-time bowl game against Florida State, and then Oklahoma to start next season. So, they're looking at this as kind of like a part of a trilogy or something.
What do you think about this one?
You just said trilogy because you have Star Wars on the brain.
I was going to say.
I've had 2 Star Wars references. No one caught the first one.
That's not true. We just ignored it.
As it would be said, joke acknowledged. So I'm with you on this one. I went to a smaller school, and I know that Group of 5 school is not a smaller school per se. But at the same time, they are treated that way in public perception when it comes to football, and it's hard not to root for the underdog, at least in perception, in this game. Even though I think you're right, I think Houston can hang with Florida State in this one. It makes you really kind of scratch your head on what would have happened with this Houston team had they not had that baffling loss to UConn. It's.
Oh, Diaco, damn you!
I really would have loved to have seen what what would have happened with Houston in all of this had they finished the season undefeated. I think it could have gotten pretty interesting. But I like the Florida State matchup. Yeah, like everybody else has already said, the fact that they're going to come in and go, yeah, sure, whatever. We're in the Atlanta, the Georgia Dome, which isn't necessarily the Cadillac of bowl venues for sure. And it's not a far road trip. I mean, yes, there will be a lot of Florida State fans in that in the Dome. It's going to probably feel more like a Florida State home game, and more like a road game for Houston. But Houston's going to be much more motivated, absolutely. And I think if they can keep it close in the first half, I think this could be one of the tighter finishes of all bowl season, because if they can keep with them, we've seen this with these, the smaller group of 5 teams. If they can stay with the big guys, when it comes down to the fourth quarter, they're the ones that have the motivation to go finish. All
those good small teams, Boise State over Oklahoma, both Utah teams, against Pitt and Alabama. You think about what those TCU in the Rose Bowl, like those teams have in common are great quarterback play and good defense, and that's what Houston's got both of those things for sure.
Yeah, so I definitely think Houston has the potential of winning this game. They just need to not get blown out early and not get overwhelmed by that Florida State speed. If Florida State's up 2 scores in the first quarter, then I would start hitting the pause button on everything. But I think if they can hang tight with them, I think that what the heck, go Cougs,
I think that if I'm like an actual betting guy, I would look at the Houston and the points and think that's really tempting, because Houston does score about 40 a game, good for 12th in the country. You can look at their schedule and say, well, maybe that's not against the best competition. Not much of a stretch to say the same thing about Florida State in some of the conference games that they get through. I would love to see Houston win this. I agree that this is a game that Florida State may or may not be paying attention to, and it will be everything for the Cougars. And as I mentioned before, really think Tom Herman is a great coach. It was a noticeable difference in my team's season last year and this year. One of a couple different things. So I would be comfortable looking at Houston to stick with this and maybe pull it out at the end. You guys asked, and I honestly had no idea. So right before I looked up. Right before we started this up, I looked up what Battle Frog is. Battle Frog is a series of obstacle course races.
One word, capital B, capital F.
Yes.
One word.
Yes. They said for people who are not content with 5K or 10K races, they look for Battle Frog.
I'm not content with 5Ks or 10Ks. Is this for me?
Wait. What about 5Ks where you get covered in colored dust?
I am content to sit on the couch.
Color runs aren't good enough either. We run and then.
As we all sit here with beverages.
Yeah, I'm content to sit on the couch with a bag of Tostitos, which is that's how I like my Fiesta Bowl.
They don't deserve your product placement.
I know. I also like my Fiesta Bowls in Sun Devil Stadium, but that's a whole other thing. The game that I picked, obviously, Ohio State against Notre Dame. Ohio State is a 6-point favorite. My analysis will be brief, and we spent a lot of time talking about motivation. When Ohio State has paid attention, they've come into games where they've been motivated to do well, and I'm thinking about Virginia Tech. I'm thinking about Penn State to a degree, a couple of the games in the middle of the season, and then finishing the game against Michigan. They've played pretty well. They've showed exactly how good they can be. The inconsistencies on the offensive side of the ball, and when that is working, I would put them up with almost anybody in the country. Maybe not to the same degree as it was a year ago. But I think if Ohio State is motivated, and I'm going to guess with the opponent being what it is, with Urban's feelings about Notre Dame being what they are, I think this team will be paying attention, and I think a touchdown or better win will be in store for Ohio State. Braden, am I wrong?
It's hard to pick Notre Dame to do much of anything in a big-time bowl game. I can't remember the last time they played well in a big-time bowl game. Now, this is a different Notre Dame team. I know it's kind of a punchline from BCS days gone by, but I mean, this is a good Notre Dame team. I mean, Deshaun Kaiser is as calm as a first-year starting quarterback as I've ever seen in the face of pretty good competition. I don't know how healthy their skill players are going to be. I know Will Fuller can be a dominant player, but I don't know how healthy. Is CJ Prosise going to be around? There's so many names that are out for them. This is has Ohio State big written all over it. Like you said, if they're motivated, they come out and they're going to knock them around a little bit. But where's Ohio State's head going to be? And it's the same thing with LSU. It's the same thing with Florida State. If Notre Dame has this us against the world thing going, then I think this is as good. This is Brian Kelly's best football team, and their offensive line is really good. So it's going to fall to their defense, which gave up a lot of big plays. I mean, Zeke Elliott, does he want to put on a show for the scouts? Michael Thomas, does he want to put on a show for the scouts? I mean, I like Ohio State, but I actually think this is one of the few games where both teams will actually show up and play almost to their potential, and if that happens, you got to go Buckeyes.
Okay. David, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I like Notre Dame in this game. This is going to be kind of a show of NFL talent at key spots, and Notre Dame has that kind of key matchups against Ohio State. Jalen Smith against Ezekiel Elliott, Ronnie Stanley against Joey Bosa. This is an Ohio State team, as you mentioned, that hasn't been on the same page all year, and other than Virginia Tech and Michigan, and now we're asking them to come back to a bowl game. After a layoff, after thinking about going pro, after watching assistants leave for head coaching jobs and all that sort of thing. What's the reason to have a lot of faith in Ohio State to play to its potential? I'm sorry, Crappy. I know I feel like I'm piling on here, but
don't blame me at all. I don't blame you at all.
You're actually the only one who's picked Notre Dame, so you're not piling on.
Yeah,
you're on the other side.
And then you watch Notre Dame, that they've kind of, I know they've lost this year, but they've played 2 close games, but they've kind of taken, their 2 losses were close to Clemson and Stanford, both very good teams, conference champions. But they've really taken their lumps in terms of injuries and that sort of thing. So they've been resilient, and Ohio State has kind of been the opposite of that this year.
Tough to argue. Carla, what do you think?
I love the fact that this game is as close as we're going to feel, other than maybe potentially the BYU-Utah game, which is for whatever reason being played in Las Vegas.
For awesome reasons.
Closest, well, I mean, 2 Utah teams, really? You're gonna make them all travel to Vegas?
BYU.
But it's one of the
BYU people love Las Vegas. I'm not lying about that. They do. It's a true story. They love Las Vegas.
There was a quote from Lavelle Edwards that BYU fans bring a $20 bill and the 10 Commandments to Las Vegas for the bowl game and break neither of them. I don't think it was. Maybe it was Lavelle Edwards. I shouldn't misquote Lavelle Edwards, but it was someone associated with BYU.
Oh, that's
okay.
perfect.
So anyhow, the point I was trying to make there by bringing up BYU and Utah is that this game, this Ohio State Notre Dame game, is as close as we're going to get to a rivalry game in a bowl game this year. Than any other game. And that's what I love about this game, because let's be perfectly frank here, we know how Urban Meyer feels about Notre Dame. We know how just about every team in the Big Ten feels about Notre Dame. This has the makings of being a pretty significant rivalry game. And, I think...
Carla, we also know how Brian Kelly feels about other humans. So,
there's that.
There will be a Brutus the Buckeye lookalike contest. And, I think Brian Kelly will win that one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Brian Kelly wins, right? Yeah. So no, I love the atmosphere of this game, other than the fact that, yes, I would prefer it to be played in Sun Devil Stadium too, but okay. So, again, I do think Ohio State has the potential of winning this game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout win by any stretch of the imagination. I think this is going to be a very tight game. But I want to throw a couple questions back at Crappy and put you on the spot, because you put everybody else on the spot tonight. So I'm going to put a couple questions on you. When you heard Notre Dame was the opponent in the bowl game, what was the first thought that went through your mind?
I was actually kind of hopeful, outside of a Rose Bowl matchup, which didn't look especially likely, right after the conclusion of the Michigan game. You see how things are going to work out. I was hoping for a matchup against Notre Dame somewhere. So that's it's a game that doesn't happen enough. I wish there would be a way to play it more often, but maybe that's maybe that would actually be too much. Doing this once a decade kind of we feels about right, and that's that we've kept up that pace since the home and home in the mid '90s. So I'm digging this. This will be a fun one.
So and that helps with your motivation factor too.
It does for me.
Yeah, and I think it does for the team. I mean, I really do. I think the fact when they were like, oh, okay, you know, we're not gonna play we're not gonna make the playoff after that loss. But then you see Notre Dame on the other side of the line, you're like, okay, game on.
I agree. This is not one of Ohio State's typical non-conference matchups. This is not a game against a middle of the pack school that we might normally not see. I think it's something that should get the players' attention. I hope it does. And if that is the case, that's going to work out well for Ohio State.
Really early start time, though, right? On like New Year's Day, so like everyone's not going to be doing anything the night before in Tempe, Arizona. Local
time. I think it's 11 o'clock start.
Where they have nothing to do for 19 and 20-year-old kids.
No,
at all.
No, and
good luck, coaches.
That'll be fun.
Okay, one last question.
Yes.
Who's your starting quarterback?
JT Burke, number 16 on right here.
Is that who you want under center?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And Urban should have gone with him from the first day of camp, and they may not be sitting in the Fiesta Bowl right now.
That's an excellent point. Carla and I will come back here one more time to talk about the national title game when we get to that point. For Braden and David, I don't want you to give away any of your professional obligations. Do you have any early thoughts about how the championship playoff is going to go?
Well, this was a tough one to pick, I think. But I was pretty much sold on Alabama over Michigan State because nobody does Alabama better than Alabama, and Michigan State, although they've kind of defied expectation all year and predictions all year, I think that's just a little too much to ask for them to beat an Alabama team that was really firing on all cylinders at the end of the year. Yeah. Oklahoma is the hottest team in the country. So I like them against Clemson. I understand why Clemson is number one and that sort of thing, and why a lot of people would pick Clemson. But Oklahoma's rolling right now, which gives you, an Oklahoma-Alabama title game, and I picked Oklahoma, but I kind of go back and forth depending on. I picked Oklahoma early in something I was writing, so now I'm stuck with Oklahoma. Now I have to talk myself into it every time I write something. So
not necessarily a bad position to be in.
No, a prediction is a living, breathing organism that can change up until the point in time where you can no longer gamble on that prediction. So you can change. I've already changed. I saw Oklahoma, Alabama when I saw the rankings. I saw Oklahoma, Alabama over the last month of the season as the best two teams in college football. I've had Oklahoma and Alabama penciled into the championship game ever since the ranking or the matchups came out, and now I'm going to try to talk myself out of that for a month, and I don't think that I'm going to be able to do that. Clemson way more so than Michigan State. Mm-hmm. At first, I thought Oklahoma was going to win it all, and I think Samaje Perine is going to be the biggest player that we're talking about at the end of this. Mayfield and Sterling Shepard, all those great players for Oklahoma. But what does Alabama do really well? And that's stop guys like Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon. So I started out Oklahoma. I've now gone back to Alabama. I've still got like 2.5 weeks to make a decision. So that's I think it's going to be hard to pick against those two teams not to win their first games at least, though. And that those are the best two teams in college football as far as I've seen. Deshaun Watson's great. Clemson's going to be one's going to be high scoring, last one with the ball. The other one's going to be whoever blinks, much like the Big Ten title game, and gets one big stop or not one big stop. So I think they're going to be great games, though.
Okay. Guys, that is Braden, Gall, and David Fox. You can find them all over athlonsports.com. And, guys, I really appreciate you joining us for, I think this is the third one. We'll do somewhere in there. Carla, you and I will talk about national championship games coming up here in a couple weeks. Thank you once again.
Thanks as always. Have a good holiday.
Thank you.
You too, guys.
You guys have great holidays, and thank you for joining us. And we will see you back here one more time for the Carla and Crappy Show Championship Edition in a couple weeks. See you later.